Hello, everyone. We'll just give it 1 minute here and let a couple additional folks into the webinar here. So we'll get started in just a minute. All right. I think we'll go ahead and get started. There'll be some other folks funneling in, but that'll be just fine. So I appreciate everyone taking time out of their busy day today to join us. And intentionally, I'm joined by Dan Natale. Dan heads up our digital marketing. My name is Kyle Hiatt. I head up our sales consulting at Intentionally. We are excited to talk to you a little bit more today about the digital transformation that's really reshaping how financial services firms generate and really nurture leads. And so the emphasis of today's webinar is going to talk about that shift to digital. We're also going to talk about bridging the gap between leads and client relationships. And then we'll actually give you some actionable steps that we'll send to you after the webinar that you can implement and take into your own firm. If you do have any questions today, we just ask that you put those into the Q&A box there on the webinar. If you hit that box, you can type in your questions there at any time, and Dan and I will do our very best to answer those throughout today's webinar. So with that, I'm going to kick it over to Dan to talk a little about the digital transformation.
Great. Thanks, Kyle. Thanks to all of our attendees here today. I think, as we start to dive in a little bit further and talk about, digital, what does it mean for lead generation? How do you bridge the gaps between leads and client relationships? And then what actionable steps can we take for your firm? So, hey, we all know this, right? The rise of digital marketing, particularly within financial services, has been continuously accelerating. We have a whole variety of stats here to show you that, but as we could see more and more, sales cycles are decreasing in length. Prospects and clients are expecting all of those your presence in all of those digital channels. And obviously, everybody is going to research their pain points, their needs, and how you can help them. And so it's really important when you think about this digital shift that has been going on for quite some time, but has been really accelerating, is there are new channels added every day. But are you ready to meet these folks when they do need to speak with a human and really talk to somebody about your solution, whether you're an RIA, a wealth tech firm? How does that transition and how does that play out? And so, we're using the word digital here throughout this presentation. And what does that really mean? And so it is more than just tools. It's channels. It's channels to add value. So this could be digital platforms. So obviously your website, social media, email marketing channels, search engines, webinars, podcasts. It can be paid channels. So, think anywhere from sponsored ads, display ads. It can be unpaid channels. So organic social media, your blog content, your thought leadership, your newsletters. But overall, think of them as mechanisms or channels in which to deliver value for your potential prospects and leads. And, we just named a whole bunch of channels out there, but it's really important that you identify the top 2 or 3 where your audiences are most active, and not to spread yourself too thin, so that you can be sure that you're delivering value through them on a consistent basis.
So Dan, a question just came in, and reminder again, if you have any questions, just type those in. But somebody wants to know, maybe you could talk about maybe at a higher level here, so don't get too into the weeds here, but at a higher level, differences between like a LinkedIn, X, Instagram, Facebook.
Sure. And I won't belabor this point, but think about your core audience, right? If you're a tech platform selling B2B, obviously LinkedIn probably makes the most sense. Maybe if you're an RIA or wealth manager, Meta or Facebook make more sense because consumers are there. Google Ads, and search engine marketing probably applies well to both audiences. And I think, first and foremost, you consider your cost per click or cost that you need to spend in order to generate those leads. And it used to be reversed. Normally, I would have said to this audience, if this were a few years ago, hey, you want to start with Google, then LinkedIn, and then Meta. Again, depending on their industry or business. But as more and more users flock to LinkedIn, and sort of away from some other platforms like Twitter, like X, um, LinkedIn has really come down in cost. And so I'm sort of biased in saying this, but I like LinkedIn, especially in 2025, followed by Google search. Again, that is getting a little bit more expensive than it used to be. And then sort of third on the list would be sort of your Facebook, your Meta, which can be good for reaching both B2B and consumer audiences. But um, I do think that there are probably two other channels that are better, and that would be LinkedIn and search. And so, we're talking here about lead generation channels, and it's important to always keep in mind, like, okay, maybe you are there, maybe you are generating leads. Um, and maybe you are on every one of these channels generating leads, but that's not enough, right? Not just to be there, but how are you closing these leads? How are you nurturing them? Um, and so if you don't nurture them, your leads are going to grow cold. Um, Prospects may go with a competitor who does reach out to them. And your money is being wasted here, if you're not following up with them in a very thoughtful and coordinated way. And so, it could be 8 to 10 touch points. That could be a mix of email or, somebody calling or picking up the phone. It is as simple as providing, you know, relative content to what their pain point or what their journey is. And so what is that, what does that mean? Are you educating? Are you providing value? Are you building trust with them? And so it's great that you're at these channels, but you have to be nurturing the leads.
Well, Dan, a question came in related to those 8 to 10 touch points. When you say
Yes.
that, typically over how long of a time period have you found?
So it can really vary, right? You don't want to do 8 to 10 in one day or 8 to 10 even in 3 days. There's no one size fits all, but depending on your sales cycle, if it's tech-based sale, that can take a little longer. So that could be over a few weeks. If it's more if you're an RIA or financial advisor, that may take even longer because again, you think about the consumer mindset and sort of the decision process that they're making there. And so, probably a minimum is 2 weeks, but you do want to space it out. You want to be not annoying, but you do want to stay in front of your prospects, in front of your leads.
Thanks.
And we're talking all a lot about digital. There are traditional lead generation approaches, obviously, that have always worked since the dawn of time, right? And so things like, in-person networking events, face-to-face meetings, maybe there's a golf outing or something in person. And those can be really powerful, obviously, in relationship-driven businesses, right? You're building trust. They do tend to have high conversion rates. And they do work. However, you are a little bit limited in geographic reach. It's difficult to measure the return on them. It's a little bit more difficult to scale. Obviously, you have a lot more associated costs with that. On the digital side, you can scale a lot more easily. You can measure things a lot quickly and a lot more efficiency. And you can change and optimize things like ads very quickly. So it's very hard to sort of optimize in-person events on the fly, though you can, you know, online, and with digital advertising, it makes it a lot easier. And so that's all well and good, but there are some challenges too. You do need constant attention. You do need to always be optimizing. And it does rely on following up on those leads consistently. And so, you know, in a scenario where a prospect sees a LinkedIn ad or downloads a guide or enters, you know, and enters a nurture sequence, that will ultimately lead to a discovery call. But there are a number of steps to sort of go along with it.
Yeah, Dan, I don't think we're arguing against traditional lead gen, right? We would say you know, want to continue doing that in addition to digital, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly right. It's like, how do you pair the two, or how do you, you know, make the best of both of those worlds?
Right.
And, you know, and I think that's sort of always to keep in mind, right? Like, I'm very biased as a, you know, digital marketing person, and I think um I love all these digital channels, and I think they're probably the one of the most, if not the most efficient way to generate leads at scale. But um I think there is a human aspect that obviously can not only reinforce what you're doing on the digital side, but make it better, improve it, and really complement it. And just to that point, right? Like, I know we touched a little bit on this already, but if you are nurturing these leads, it's going to be really important that you're segmenting your audiences. So you're not giving everybody the same content in a follow-up email. Segment them by pain points, by audience, by job title. Use a mix of different types of content. So that can be educational type of content. That can be trust building content, right? Where you sort of show off and validate why you are a great solution for the client. It's also, though, important, you got to have some action towards the end of your sequence, right? You need to push them to picking up the phone and either calling you or setting up time, or being open and receptive to somebody calling them. And so, yeah, you do have to build trust and you do have to provide value, but you know, you still need to close the lead. And so I think it's really important as you're thinking about your nurture campaigns to always keep that in mind. And you know, if there's one takeaway though, obviously, is don't sell too hard. So I know I said, hey, you have to be action oriented, and you do towards the end of a sequence, but don't hit them with a buy now or set up a meeting right away. Let them have the option, at least initially.
Great. So Dan, another question came in here. Again, if you have additional questions, type those in the Q&A, please. But the question came in about, you know, what do you find is typically can go wrong, you know, when firms are doing digital, where have you found that it often goes wrong or where when it doesn't work?
Um, there's a lot of different ways, and that of course that it can go wrong. But I think, you know, the biggest challenge, again, assuming, right, that you are generating leads, that you are reaching the right audience on the ad side. Um, I think it is usually a mix of either speaking too broadly at an audience in your follow-up, um, or um, not really recognizing, all right, when is it time to sort of push that action sort of part of the segment of the of the nurture. So, um, you know, you could say, oh yeah, we hit them with, you know, 5 to 10 educational emails with free content, and then we validate it with testimonial. And we didn't get to sort of the action step until email 10. That might be too late in some cases for some firms. And in other cases, you may have tried to do that on the second email, which might have been too early. Well, how do you know, right? And I think it's important to say, like, wow, there's no perfect solution. Look at the metrics. And I think you have to start to dive in and really use a metrics-based approach and really determine like, okay, are people unsubscribing after email 3 or 4? Did I notice a drop off in clicks or in opens or engagement after email 7? And you have to continually dig in and change and improve and sort of optimize as you go.
Great. Great. Let me talk a little bit about the human element now. Dan's talking about the digital element. Let's talk a little bit about complementing that with the human element here, and SDRs in particular. So sales development reps. Some people call these BDRs, business development reps. But either way, their really responsibilities are, one, to engage with those marketing generate, those digital leads, in this case, what Dan's talking about, right? Whether they fill out a form on your website, they download something, they sign up for a webinar here. So they're tasked with, assessing the readiness of that prospect, right? Are they ready to buy now? If not, when? And what additional data points do you want to gather from that prospect so you know additional information about them and about their firm? And so the ultimate goal, though, for that SDR is really gather that information, and then should they be ready, then move them along to, maybe it's a demo if you're a wealth tech, fintech firm, or maybe it's a call with a senior advisor, right? You're operating inside of an RIA perhaps. But I can't stress one thing enough, in that these SDRs need to be in lockstep with the marketing team, right? So as they are hearing things on calls or responses on emails, they are then feeding that information to marketing, and then marketing is, changing, modifying as necessary, if necessary. So they are regularly collaborating and determining, hey, this is working, this is what's not working, maybe this is why, this is what we should change. And they're going to use those insights to continuously improve that campaign, because it is going to be something continuous. You're not going to get it right out of the gate. But I think the most important thing is, as these SDRs reach out to these prospective clients, that they have context in terms of, hey, this is what they did to get to this point, right? What did they engage with? Did they fill something out on a website? Did they download a particular white paper, a case study, something along those lines? So they need to have that context. So that way, when they're reaching out to those individuals, they, have appropriate information as to what to speak to. All right. So in terms of integrating that SDR into the process here, again, after they've interacted with something like a webinar or content download, then we were asking these people to, tailor that message to the individual based upon how they interacted, right? So maybe they attended the webinar on retirement strategies. So now let's call them and discuss how we can help achieve those goals. I can't overemphasize this enough, and Dan said it earlier, but you're not trying to push an immediate sale, right? Because more than likely, that individual is not ready. It may be the case, and that certainly can be the case. I would say it's very rare that they are ready to take some sort of action and move forward. So there has to be some sort of follow-up process in place, right? And along the way, you're sharing resources with them that nurture, that are going to align with those needs that they came to you, or they downloaded, right? Some sort of educational article that applies to them and their situation. Like I said, a case study, some sort of a guide. So in action, right? The digital person, or the digital, I should say, digital campaign, they're downloading something, and then an SDR is following up with them, whether that's an email, whether that's a call. As Dan mentioned earlier, right? It typically takes 8 to 10 different touch points along the way to typically get them to move to the next stage. But again, everything you're doing along the way needs to help the prospect and help make their decision easier. So I can't overemphasize that enough either. But so again, you're not immediately out of the gate like, hey, let's do this, let's go, right? They're not quite ready yet. So, but you need to send them content and information and talk to them that can make that process easier to get them to that decision point.
Hey Kyle, I have a question here for
Yeah.
you on that. Um, where would you see an SDR role not work well in a firm?
Yeah, I would say, I think we find this, Dan, right? You see this too, right? We go into a firm and they've got, great marketing in place. They get leads coming in, but okay, they're like now what do we do with them, right? So they don't have a process in place to follow up, right? Maybe they don't even reach out to these individuals. It's something as simple as that. But I would say if there's no process in place, and then to top it off, if there's no tech to complement that process, then that's where often things go wrong, right? So if there's no technology in place, say this is what the process is, this is how the tech enables that process, and then reminds the SDR, this is what you should be doing, this is who you should be doing it to, and when. Um, that would be an area. I'd also say if you're just having the SDR do cold outbound, lead conversion is going to be very, very low. We don't see that working well. You need to, couple it with some of these things we've been talking about here on the marketing side.
Then one more question for you. Like,
Mhm.
could a firm use, some senior sales folks that they already have to do
Yeah, that's a
this?
good one. Yeah, so I would say this. So, you know, if you have a senior, advisor, if you're inside of an RA firm or a senior salesperson inside a wealth tech, fintech firm, I would argue those individuals really need to be focused on, and hopefully you're paying them to do this, but those individuals need to be focused on closing business, right? They're not having to worry about, hey, is this person ready to go to the next stage, right? Are they qualified at all to begin with? So you don't want them wasting time on those individuals that aren't ready and aren't qualified. You want them focused on high intent, high quality leads that are ready to go that next stage, and they're focused on closing that business. So that's what I would say. If somebody says, "Hey, should I hire an SDR or use the existing, senior salespeople I have within the firm?"
Great, thanks.
That. And now, Dan, you want to talk about some next steps here?
So I think, you know, for everybody just to take this away, you have to ask yourself, am I blending digital and traditional methods effectively? How can I audit my current lead gen strategy? Are my nurture sequences refined? Are my SDRs empowered? And so I think you can just sort of easily look and identify gaps in your current funnel. Are there follow-ups happening at every stage? Um, Maybe testing out a hybrid approach. Use digital to generate awareness, and traditional methods to generate trust. And then set measurable goals for lead engagement. Um, Again, look and optimize and see what's working and what's not working. And just take a really hard look at how everything is interconnected and intertwined.
And Dan, you
And
want to talk a little
we,
bit about what we put
yeah,
together for everyone here today?
Yeah, we're very excited. We do have a free 6-step framework to sort of help you grow in this landscape a little bit further. It touches on a variety of the things that we talked about today, but there are some other helpful sort of tips and frameworks to help you, really nail down your ICP, how you might best optimize conversions, streamline a lot of your current processes. And make sure that you're defining roles and accountability very clearly. And then sort of answering the big question, right? Um, do you need to outsource this or do you handle it internally, which is sort of one of the bigger questions that is really tied up into all of this.
Great. And so we will be sending this out to everyone as a follow-up here. So you get this deck along with that 6-step framework it'll be in your inbox tomorrow. So look for that. Okay, I would be remiss, Dan, I think if we didn't talk a little bit about intentionally, right? So we can definitely help in all these matters that we just discussed. We are and have deep domain expertise in the financial services space, whether you're a fintech, wealth tech, uh, an RIA, right, asset manager. That is our background. That's the only type of clients that we do work with. We do have a continuous, optimization that we put into place. Should we put things into market for you? to make sure that you are receiving, the maximum ROI on those efforts. We do provide reporting to you on a weekly, monthly, quarterly basis, showing you the results of those things that we put into market for you. And the biggest one I would say is that, if you are searching for a firm to help you in these areas, look for somebody that is a full service solution. So I think you'll find people that just do the digital element and just put those into market for you. They don't do any of the content. They don't do any of the design, right? We actually do all of that, and then we couple that also with an SDR. So there was a question about, hiring SDRs. We do have fractional SDRs that we can provide to you, so you don't have to hire full-time resources there. So it is an end-to-end marketing strategy and support that we put together for you. Okay, there is a question here before we wrap up. Dan, maybe this is for you, but if your marketing plan is more in the infancy stage and you're focused more on brand awareness, right, versus lead generation, what kind of KPIs should they key in on?
That's a good one because sometimes, especially if you're just starting out, measuring brand awareness or the effectiveness of brand awareness based advertising can be very difficult. And so I think some very simple things that you can do is look at just general increases in web traffic. Again, it may not be a one-to-one, like, hey, somebody saw my ad and clicked, although that is a KPI you should be measuring. But are you seeing growth both on your organic channels and referral traffic? Is your web traffic growing? That might be a sort of a easier, quick indicator of how successful your effort is going there. Additionally, something we always like to do, and here's a little tip, is look at your own branded search volume. So it won't get too into the weeds here, but if you go into Google Search Console, you can go and look and see, hey, am I seeing a lot more increases in searches for my company's brand name? Well, then you have a good sense that, oh, somebody must have seen my ad somewhere, or I've seen my awareness generating efforts, and they're entering a search into Google to look for me.
Yeah, great. Okay. I think we're going to wrap. I think that is all the questions that I do see. I appreciate everyone, again, taking time out of your day. If you want to learn more about this, about how we can help, please reach out to Dan or myself. You can certainly go to our website at intention.ly. Follow us on LinkedIn. Subscribe to our newsletter if you wish. But again, thank you so much for your time, and we look forward to talking with you. And expect that email tomorrow from us on this presentation, along with that guide that we mentioned. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.